Hey, and welcome to this show. I don't know what to really talk about with it as far as title. I'm Sam. Some folks call me Bo. I'm the owner and head blacksmith at Ravens Keep Forge. But we're taking a little different turn over some of these videos, and we're going to discuss pagans and cancer because it's just not really addressed that I can find until a few days ago. I was told I needed to kind of look into it and just happened to run across Jess, who you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And she has a book that just came out, literally as the February here that we're recording, just came out on her journey with cancer as a pagan. And I'm really looking forward to really kind of digging into it and having looked over it. It's the journey. It's really, so we're going to find out about that. Jess was diagnosed back in 2019 after a routine mammogram and spent the following year living through many of the worst experiences. If you've got cancer, you can kind of identify with that. Common to breast cancer survivors. She's been a practicing solitary pagan since 96. That's 1996. Studying Wicca, North, Greek, and Irish traditions for worship, philosophy, and craft. She's been dedicated to the Morrigan since 2012 and ordained in 2020. She also writes fantasy and paranormal romance, reads, gardens poorly, I identify with that, and is a painfully beginning cello player. Probably shares too much on her blog. She lives in the woods with her fabulous husband, a horde of busy teenagers, two huge dogs, and Angus, a cat who rules them all. We have an Angus, a
You?
black cat, yeah, named Angus, and he's psychotic. Um,
Yep. So is mine.
Welcome, Jess. Thank you so much for taking time and talking with us about this because it's a hard conversation,
It is a
on
hard conversation.
period. And then you have your pagan, and I'm a two-time cancer survivor myself. I'm still within the two years. I got diagnosed in May 2 years ago, and then August a second time was something
Oh,
completely different. So I've
no.
just next week I get to go through my 6 month radiation follow-up, my first one.
Okay.
But I'm still doing the whole CAT scans with the first one, and it's just, I mean, it's brutal.
It
And
is.
being a pagan, I'm rural south, right? And the hospital I go to for treatment, which is a fabulous, has one of the top oncology units in the country, but it's Baptist Hospital.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
Yep.
to try to do all that with alternative spirituality, it's a challenge. So, first of all, what made you want to write the book?
So I had a really similar experience. When you go through, when I went through surgery and all of that stuff, right? They don't really ask you anything about your religion because they don't need to know that. They're like, we're going to cut it out. It's going to be fine. Move along. I mean, that's their whole philosophy when you get surgery, right? But when you go to oncology, it's one of the first questions that they asked. When I was getting ready to do chemo, when I did like my intake interviews and stuff to do chemo, that was on the list of questions. What's your spirituality? Do you go to a church? What is your spiritual support system? And they use that right along with what is your personal support system? Do you have family at home? All those kinds of questions. And they told me very frankly that um, having support and finding comfort in your whatever your religion is really important because getting through the marathon of crap that is cancer treatment requires so much resilience. And people who have religious or spiritual support have more resilience and you have a better attitude and all of that. I'm going to make it through this sort of feeling. And so I am very introverted. So when they recommended a bunch of the different cancer support groups that were in the area, that you could like go and listen to other people's stories and kind of sit around and have that kind of support, that was an immediate absolutely not for me. And so then I looked all over for a book because I'm a reader. That's where I get most of my comfort, really, in my spare time. And there was nothing. I found, at one point I had the statistics, and it was like 5 or 6 thousand cancer support books on Amazon when I did my breast cancer and breast cancer pagan support was what I was looking for. And what I got was like 5,000 returns that were all from primarily from a Christian perspective, or from what I kind of call Christian light, where it's not specifically a denomination of Christianity, but it's very much based on angel support, which is great. If that's how people find their comfort, I'm all for it. That's awesome. There was one Buddhist book that I found and one Jewish book that I found at the time. So by the time I finished, I also get a little gentle nudge here and there, which is not really so gentle. And so when I finished treatment, that was my next assignment, really.
I'm grateful that you listened, because I really think it's muchly needed, because like a week or so ago, I got the nudge, that
Yeah.
we need to do something. And I look, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
In fact, I found one Facebook group, and it's like 4 people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
there's got to be more, right?
Mhm.
So, I'm gonna just kind of walk. Do you have a copy of your book handy?
I do. Yeah.
Can you hold it up? I've got the e-version. So
Oh, and I'm backwards on the thing
I'm
because
seeing it look right
okay, good.
on our end. So you're Defying Shadows is the book. It was just released a few days ago.
Yeah.
You can get it from everywhere, right? I'll
Yep.
put some links down for your publisher and all that kind of stuff
Yep.
down in the description, so you'll have all that. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through some of the chapters, and it kind of takes through the journey, lack of a better word. And
Mhm.
if you're joining us and you have just been diagnosed or have gone through it, maybe this will kind of help with the processing. Because I don't know, it's going to be a while before I get to that point. I'm
Yeah.
still, there's days even now to where I'm like, I'm giving myself a cookie just to get out of bed still.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because I'm still dealing with the fatigue, from radiation. Just, it's just horrible. So talk us through when you're first diagnosed. This was back in 2019.
Yeah.
Um,
So I went in for I make a comment in the book about how I was 42, and so I'm a big Douglas Adams fan, right? So I was like, ooh, 42, I am the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Yes. And then that fall, I realized, oh, it's been a couple years since I had a mammogram. And at the time, my doctors were saying that you should really do it like starting when you're 40. And it hadn't been for a couple years. So I went and had a routine one, went on with my day, whatever. Um, and then I got the letter, which is very common, right? So finding there's an abnormality or we see something that's weird. Can you come in for an ultrasound? That is super, super common. And for most people, it ends up being nothing. Mine, the ultrasound was fine, but then the radiologist who came in said, so we need you to have a biopsy. And that was when I knew something was actually wrong, right? Because the girl who did the ultrasound, she was super professional. Whatever she saw, if she saw anything, she had like an excellent poker face. You could not tell that there was anything wrong.
they're
He
like
walked
that.
in and it was like, don't ever play poker, my dude, because I can tell something is not good. So, um, I got the call, I think about a week after that, after the biopsy, and it was your whole world just stops. Everything that you're doing that day stops. And if I'm being completely honest, that is the moment where everything that you were is gone. Because from that moment forward, you are now a cancer patient. And that is a totally different deal than whatever plans you had in your head for your life prior to that moment. That is like a watershed line in the sand.
Yeah, it does. It changes
It
everything.
does. Yeah. So yeah, then it was, I mean, those first couple weeks was a whirlwind of biopsies and MRI, which I describe in the book because it's so hilariously undignified, just hilariously awful. A breast biopsy or a breast MRI is really, really undignified. So, and it's just a series of all of that. And honestly, that whole first couple of weeks was just it's almost a blur because you're so emotionally overwrought and terrified. Honestly, I think the panic of not knowing what the next steps are.
That's it. It's the unknown,
Yes,
because
it's really terrible.
because it's such a gamut, right?
Hmm.
With cancer, because it's this umbrella, and then you got all this stuff that's crammed up underneath the umbrella. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's horrible. So, um, how did that work out with your journey with the Morrigan during
So
during that time, or was that
I
after?
no, I had been following the Morgan for quite a while. And
Okay.
so of course that was kind of the first place that I went. And I was too I was too panicky to really do anything formal. I mean, and I'm sort of a terrible pagan, honestly. I don't do a lot of formality and I don't do formal ritual very often. A lot of it is just on a daily basis, like
Mhm.
little things that I do listening and talking to her. And I'm super practical, so I don't use a lot of tools a lot of the time and that kind of thing either. And I remember laying in bed at like 2 in the morning, just trying really hard to meditate and think, please help me get through this, no matter what the outcome is, because I feel like I am doing this by myself, which is silly. I mean, my parents lived close by. They're super supportive. My sisters are close by, but I lived alone at the time. Like it was me and the dog and the cat. And it was like it's that nighttime, middle of the night kind of thinking, okay, is this it? Am I gonna die? Kind of those thoughts. It's really hard to stop. So I spent a lot of time during kind of what I call the panic diagnosis mode, just talking to her like every day and trying really hard to listen.
It's hard because there's so much. Well, for me, because there was just so much other stuff going on.
Yeah.
There was just, now what? And there's not a clear path. There's this.
Yes. Yes.
Depending on what, there's this.
Mhm.
Um, and then, you talk about that something that people don't, they talk about it, but they don't talk about it, but it's the money. I
Yeah.
mean, this is not an inexpensive treatment
No, it's not.
at
I
all.
kept track. I kept
You
track, and
know,
I have one normal boob and one $250,000 boob. I'm like bionic lady on one side, right? Because every time I had a chemotherapy infusion, it was like between 16 and 30 grand. And this is not new chemotherapy drugs. These are the drugs that I had, the infusions that I had are drugs that have been around since the 70s. So they're not new. They're just specialty. And they have to be mixed specifically for your weight and your circumstances. And so because of that, cancer is really expensive. It's terrible. And if you don't have good insurance, it's a bankrupter.
yeah, I hit two max out of pockets this
Yeah.
year, because I hit one and then, I kind of was pushing off treatment on the second. My first one was stage 3, and then the other one was stage 2. And I'm thinking, well, I'm just gonna I want to recover from this one first,
Yeah.
before I deal with the other one, because the first one was surgery. Um, and it was extremely invasive. I had a liposarcoma,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
a fatty cancer, right? It's attached to and it was in my abdominal. So they had to
Okay.
cut out a lot of my abdominal structure took 3 surgeons to put me back together one of those. I was in a hospital for 4 or 5 days and
I was
probably
going to
came
say that's a
home.
tough recovery.
Yeah, and I came home way too soon because, hey, you're ready to go. I want to go,
Yeah.
and I really should anyway. Um, and then the next year, the numbers were starting to go in the wrong direction in a hurry.
Mhm.
My numbers like doubled after, doing a follow-up test. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't done all this just to, get knocked out, so,
Right. Yeah.
um, and it's horrific because you're thinking, I was thinking, oh my God, am I going to make it? Right. And
Mhm.
if I don't, I'm leaving this huge debt, and if I do, I have this huge debt,
Yeah,
regardless, even with good insurance, it's still a nice little chunk of change,
it is. Yeah.
and it's horrific that you have to deal with a major life altering, you know, sickness, event, and then you've got, all this other stuff too. So what did you do? Was there anything in, particular? 'Cause I know you talk a little bit about it in the book. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you were doing specifically to kind of address the money issue?
So I was, well, first of all, I was very lucky. I had, for some reason, the prior year, because I had only been at my job for 9 months when I got diagnosed. Like I was really afraid I was going to get fired, honestly.
Mm,
Which they didn't, thank goodness. And for the first time ever, they offered, I mean, I've been at other jobs where they've offered like critical illness insurance, right?
hmm
And I've never taken it because I was like, oh, whatever, I don't need that. It's fine. So this time, not only had I taken it, but I had taken the highest amount that you could get. And so I like paid extra in premium and stuff for that. And I am 100% convinced that that was a strong nudge because there was no reason for me to take it at the time. I was perfectly healthy and I just, it was like, oh, they're offering that. Huh, I should do that. And yeah, that turned out to be a lifesaver for me
Yeah.
because it covered it covered the my max out of pocket, which I hit twice, just like you, like twice in 6 months, because I had surgery and everything in November, and I started chemo in December, and then January was the restart, right? So the very first chemo knocked like blew right through my max out of pocket for the whole year. And if I hadn't had that, I think I would have been in real trouble. So, plus, the other thing that people never really talk about is you are so exhausted and the fatigue is so bad. And depending on what chemo meds you're on, if you have chemo, you're so sick that you can't work. And if you don't have a job that has short-term disability, which many, many people don't, I mean, that's a killer right there. Like you're supposed to not only pay for all of your insurance that you have to pay for and all of this stuff out of pocket, but then you're also not really having any income at that time because it's too exhausting to have income. So, yeah, I did. I put a bunch of like little charms and stuff that I had done. I also was very proactive because I'm very practical about looking for whatever assistance is out there, and there is quite a bit of cancer assistance available.
And I think in the back of your book, you've got a lot of those listed, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly from looking at it. I didn't go quite into the appendix, but I saw there was a whole bunch of stuff, for resources that you list
Yeah.
in your book, which I think is very helpful for folks. Um,
Mm.
Now I didn't have to do chemo, I had to hormone therapy and brachytherapy
Okay.
and that kind of stuff. So I didn't, thankfully, because I've just nightmares of all that. So
Yeah.
and something that I wish I had known, well, I really wish I'd have had your book, going through some of this because you address how to do practice, right? When you have nothing in the tank,
Right.
because there was days where I know that, because I'm a priest of the Morrigan as well, and it's, I knew there were days I felt like a bad priest because I didn't have it.
Hmm.
I would go light my daily candle, but I just kind of go, oh, I'm going back to
Yep.
bed.
Yep.
I got nothing. I really wish that I'd have had, because I didn't think of some of the techniques and things that you talk about. Can you share some of how do you do that when you don't have anything?
Yeah. So some of it I did where I would just time things differently. Because and this was harder during chemo brain, sorry. Still 5 years later, still have chemo brain fog sometimes. Um, when I was doing radiation, the fatigue was different because it is cumulative, right? So at the beginning of radiation, I felt totally fine.
Mm.
And by the end of radiation, I would go to take a 20-minute nap and it would be 3 hours later, and I had no idea what happened to the time. So the fatigue is different. So the prep was different. When I was doing chemo, a lot of the first 3 days of chemo, you actually feel pretty good because they put you on all kinds of anti-nausea meds. They put you on a lot of mine had like a steroid that you had to take while you were doing the infusion. The I had two different chemo drugs, and the second one was it was actually originally derived from the Pacific yew tree. So that one you have to take steroids with it because otherwise it causes like it's a nerve agent and it
Mm.
causes nerve pain if you don't have steroids with it. Anyway, so I felt really, really good on those days. And I got in a habit of setting up either doing whatever work I wanted to do on those days because I felt good and I had energy, or setting it up so that I wouldn't have to do much else other than lighting a candle on the days that I couldn't do anything. And I even have in the book, I've got a technique that I used where on the days that you feel really good, you charge whatever stones you like to use or whatever icons that you like to use, and place them. I actually placed them around the bed on the four quarters around the bed with like a grounding stone that was underneath the bed. And I would have those charged in advance on the days that I had energy so that when I had none, I could still raise a circle from laying in bed because the energy was there available to use when I didn't have anything.
And there
And
are those days, and that's brilliant. I mean, I just, I wish I'd have known, because it was just there, because you have them. I mean,
yeah,
there's those days to where, it's just, I roll over and hey, I need a star,
yep,
because I
yep,
moved,
yeah,
it was, um, and then you talk also about, the dealing with the pain and the exhaustion you talk about. And then you have a really good list of, incense and oils and things that you can handle. Um, when you can't handle anything,
yeah,
and as well as a huge library of what to eat,
yeah.
you know, um, which I think is just fantastic, and a lot of foods that you recommend, and the whole process. I'm so grateful for you
Oh, thank
for
you.
writing this. Even now, when I was skimming over it before we got together, and I was like, yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Wish that I had that. Wish that I known that. You got so many tips and tricks, and you're so open about it because it's,
Mhm.
there's a lot of stigma, right? Because like I said,
Sure.
with me, I felt bad, because I couldn't do things. I know there was no reason to,
Yeah.
because we have this. Everybody's got their own relationship with
Yep.
whatever, and I think that you do really well not gearing it to a specific part of paganism as an umbrella, because we all have our thing, whether you're heathen or, polytheistic, or, we've got all these little sects. And I think your book's written really well. Well, no matter where you are, you can get something that'll work for you, and I very much appreciate the way you wrote that for that
Oh,
reason,
thank you. That was my goal. So I'm glad that I succeeded.
Yeah, because I think it's huge, because I think in our community, we need the help. I mean, it's hard
Yeah.
enough as it is. and you had some resources to help you through it. I had, my beloved was my caretaker,
Yeah.
still is, through all of it. And I had, close knit friends, and I've got a pretty good sized community that helped and support some of that time, but it still, you know, um, there's a new normal, and you
Yeah.
talk about that. We talked about, once you have cancer, now you're a cancer patient, but it's not just that. You don't, I was guilty of this, right? Because it was like, you hear people get cancer and then they're cancer free, and you're like, okay, well, they're good.
Yeah.
They're back to it. And now that I've had it, it's different because there's a new normal,
Right.
and can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, how to kind of address that and kind of absorb that?
Yeah. That is, I think that's actually one of the hardest parts of it, because you do have to completely redefine who you're going to be now. I mean, cancer, even if you don't die of cancer, there is a death there, because the death of everything that you were prior, that you planned on being, is that's what died. Like I'll never look at the world the same way, because and I'm sure, I can't say for certain, obviously, but I'm sure that it is similar to anyone who has also faced their own mortality in other ways, right? Like soldiers and cops and all that stuff. Like once you've actually faced that, you're not the same. And the person that you were is not the same anymore. So I actually went through a whole grieving process, and I spent a lot of time. So one of my favorite aspects of the Morrigan is Bob, and I spent a lot of time meditating. And like I had dreams where I had vivid conversations. Absolutely. And at first it was this isn't your time yet. You're going to get through this. And then we're going to work. Right. Which was comforting. But then it also became like conversations about how, okay, you have to find new meaning in your life. You have to absorb this huge change, because the way that your outlook on life and your outlook on life has changed so significantly that you no longer assume that you have time for anything. Even when you're perfectly healthy, you never assume ever, ever again that there's time. So, and I'm still a little bit of a terrible procrastinator, but there's a lot of things that I will jump on now, and risks that I'll take, like personally and professionally, that I would never have done before. I don't know if this book would have happened had I not been pushed a little bit. But once I got into it, I was like, okay, this needs to be done, because this is this is my journey through this and what's happening in survivorship. And if I can kind of help, not that everybody's journey is the same, everybody's journey is very, very different. But at the very least, if somebody has broken the trail for you a little bit and given you some signposts along the way of things that might be helpful, that was what I was going for. Now I'm writing other things, and I'm involved. Like my life has totally changed because I'm so much more open to opportunities that come, because who knows how much time I have left. And I'm cancer free. Like I'm very lucky. I'm cancer free, but I still have that attitude. So,
Yeah. I think for
mhm.
me right now, where I'm, because I know like you said, everybody's going to have a different part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's the ongoing testing that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because I still got the every 6 months CT scans for the first one, and then I've
Yep.
got just now getting ready to have my 6 month follow up for radiation to see if I am in remission.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's those days are brutal.
Yeah. Those days are terrible.
Those days are brutal.
Yeah. The first, um, I still have I'm 5 years out just about, and I still have 6 month follow-ups with my oncologist. Um, and the first, so I finished treatment in the end of June, and my first follow-up mammogram was in like October of that same fall. And I actually I was super impressed with myself because I made it through the mammogram itself. It was like I dissociated and I was fine getting through that. When I got out to the car, I started to shake and I felt sick. And I was sitting in the car in the parking lot for half an hour to 45 minutes, crying so hard that I couldn't see. And I only have an annual mammogram. I don't go in every 6 months, but I have it annually. And that response has only, it's probably diminished to like half. Like I still to this day sit in my car after the mammogram, and mammogram day is terrible enough that I usually take the day off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That PTSD response is no joke.
Yeah.
It's really
I,
awful.
I had a lot of it during radiation. I'd get done with the
Yep.
treatment and get down, to the car and just lose it,
Yeah.
because it's like, the thought of choosing to kill a part of yourself,
Yeah. Yep.
that's hard,
It is.
and then and then you've got all the other, physical things that go along with it. But yeah, it's no joke.
No,
It's, I mean, I've been through the desert, I've been through divorce, and none of that compares to
no.
the pain that cancer's caused.
Yeah.
Not just it, but all the stuff that's kind of associated with it. And I'm grateful that you did put some signposts. It's almost like what to expect.
Yeah.
Because these are all the things, no matter, I think, where you are in your journey, or what type of cancer that you have, you're going to experience somewhat of this.
Right.
I think, because after skimming through it, I was like, there was that common denominator that everybody feels going through a shared trauma,
Yeah.
right? It's like I read it. It's like, okay, well, I know you, because we're a lot alike, because we both had a lot of the similar experiences,
Yeah.
through that. So it kind of, gave me comfort.
Yeah.
So
Oh, good.
I appreciate that very, very,
Yep.
very much. I can't say that enough, I think. Is there anything that you want to talk about, or say that we haven't, that you want to address?
I think I think that it's important to remember that survivorship
Mm.
is not it's not as traumatic as going through chemo, but it's not easy. So I had gotten divorced a few years before, right? I had been through a divorce too. And you're right, the divorce was nothing compared to the trauma of the medical trauma of cancer. Divorce was nothing. And we're actually still friendly. And every time I go to the doctor for anything, there's that anxiety. And I actually had last fall, I had a scare, which turned out to be precancerous cells. And then I had a hysterectomy, which was interestingly directly related to the hormone blocking medication that I was on for my first cancer, right? So, it's interesting how it's even in survivorship, the medical stuff, it never really goes away because your doctors, like your regular doctors, any little thing that pops up, they're like, okay, let's get you scanned for everything right now.
Yep.
I mean, it's you are an urgency always with your doctor, and they never blow anything off because they don't know exactly what's going on. And that is its own source of anxiety. Like, so every time I go to the doctor for anything now, it's a scary thing. And
It's like
that, so,
taking your car to the dealership. You're just waiting for them
yes,
to find something else wrong.
yes, that's exactly what it's like. So, I focus really hard on trying to do like joyful and healthy self-care and spend time with family and do all of that kind of stuff because there is always this a little bit of underlying worry that I think is never going to go away and people don't really talk about it. The other thing that and I say this in the book too, I am a huge, huge, huge proponent of therapy. I had such bad, well, so I started going to therapy right after I finished um, radiation because I knew that I had all of this. I was so angry that this had
Mm.
happened to me. I was so disheartened and sort of like despondent. Like I really was like, nobody's ever going to date me because now I'm a bad bet because I was a cancer patient, right? There was all of this stuff. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to be alone with my dogs and the cat for the rest of my life. And I don't know how to restart things. I don't know what to do next. And so I started going to a therapist then. And it was immensely, immensely helpful. So I'm a huge proponent of not only doing the spiritual side of things, but also doing the mental health side of things.
Mm.
Because I am now, I started dating someone that fall and we are now married and I'm a stepmom and
Bonus mom, I think is what
I'm
you
a
said.
bonus mom.
Love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
No,
That's
I
what the
think that's,
kids call me. And
yeah.
um that was a really like that to me, that felt like a gift from the Morrigan. That felt like, okay, you made it through and you can't have kids now for sure anymore, which was harder than I thought it was going to be, actually. And then, oh, here you go, ready-made family. Get into all the drama and fun and craziness of that now, and that's your next step. So, um, yeah, I really think that therapy combined with listening
Mm.
listening to those nudges and listening to what you dream about and however those messages come to you because they come differently for everybody, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think those are both in tandem why I am where I am today.
Do you think your practice is, well, maybe a silly question, whether or not is different now than it was
Yes.
because of it?
Yeah, I think so. More I do more of a daily practice.
Mm.
Like I do, and I have always based my practice around like gratitude, like that if I have nothing to say or nothing, I'm not asking for anything or I'm not doing a big working, I still will stop like at the statue that I have or just sit and meditate for a minute or whatever, however I feel like contacting with her that day and say thank you for being in my life and for influencing what's going on. And that I am much more uh stringent about doing that every day now,
Mm.
I think. Yeah.
I
And
can
I
get that.
probably listen better than I did before.
Probably a lot more sensitive to it,
Yeah.
because of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Well,
Hmm.
thank you. Well, I'm gonna put all your contacts, your website, um, and all your information in the show notes, so people can just
Oh,
kind of go down here and click
thank you.
um, your link to Amazon, all that kind of stuff, because you're everywhere now. You're a
Yeah,
published author.
I know it's crazy.
How's that feel?
Surreal. Absolutely surreal. Like I got my author copies and just felt like somebody had hit me in the face. Like I was like completely stunned. I don't know, it never felt really real until that moment. And yeah, it still is surreal. So
Well, congratulations and thank you.
thank you, thank
That's,
you.
that's big work. That's big work.
I hope
All right,
I
everybody.
hope it's
We'll see
useful.
y'all next time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.